Welcome to Benson on Injury Law.
Welcome back to Benson on Injury Law with Paul Benson. Paul is a personal injury attorney based in Wisconsin, and he spent the last decade helping people across the state get fair treatment after serious accidents. I'm Leann Lyon, and today we're talking about how Wisconsin handles uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage and why it can make a big difference after a crash. Hello, Paul. Good to see you again.
Hey, you too, Leann.
So, Paul, when a crash involves a driver who doesn't have insurance, what usually happens next for the insured person?
Well, it can sometimes be quite a mess because your insurance company doesn't want to pay the claim. They want the other driver's insurance to pay. Let's start with the property damage. By that, I mean your car, getting your car fixed. So if you have collision insurance, okay, great. Your company will step up and pay that claim. They probably want to make sure, even though they should just pay no matter what, sometimes they really will try to push you to find the other insurance company. You have to push back and say, no, they didn't have insurance. I need to get my car fixed. Because time is of the essence in a lot of these situations. Most people rely on their car to get to work, school, take their kids. You need your car. So getting your car fixed quickly is always the first pain point in these cases. And when that other driver doesn't have insurance, it does slow things down a little bit, and you got to get over to your collision carrier. Let's say you don't have collision coverage. A lot of people maybe just have liability coverage on their policy. In that situation, you are often out of luck. So I tell everyone, if you can't afford to write a check for a new car, then you need to have collision insurance on your policy, because in Wisconsin, about 1 out of 6 accidents are caused by people without insurance. 1 out of 6 accidents. So you have a pretty decent chance, if you get in a wreck, of the person hitting you not having insurance, and then you're going to be left paying for that out of your pocket unless you have collision coverage. That's the first part. The next part is the injury part of your case. The injury part of your case works the same way. If you have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, that's kind of like the injury side of collision coverage. It will step up and pay for your injuries if that other person doesn't have coverage. But let's say you don't have that, and all you've got is just liability on your policy, you're going to be out of luck. Now, can you make a claim against this, guy or gal who hit you without coverage? Of course you can. You could sue them. But your odds of collecting on that judgment, in my own experience, are not the best. The reality is people with assets normally are pretty good at making sure they've got insurance, and people without assets are often the ones who don't have insurance. That's just the cold, hard reality. So if someone hits you without insurance, there's often not a lot of assets to satisfy a judgment. So you can go get a judgment against them, but it might not be worth the piece of paper it's written on.
Unfortunately, I can speak to all of this and more, not only uninsured, underinsured, and no license. The person who hit in Wisconsin.
It can be so aggravating because already you got in a wreck and you're frustrated, and then you find out they don't have insurance, and basically you're gonna be on your own here. So people call me really frustrated, and I am always begging people, get that uninsured, underinsured coverage, get that collision coverage. Unless you can afford to cover all of this out of your pocket and self-insure, you need to make sure you're covered, because there's just too many uninsured drivers out there, or underinsured. That's something that we don't talk about quite as much. The state minimum policy in Wisconsin is only $25,000 for liability, $10,000 for property. I mean, pickup trucks cost $60,000 or $70,000 now. SUVs can cost $80,000. So $10,000 in property damage, that'll hardly fix anything. So you need to make sure you're covered as well.
So just for people who may not know, what is uninsured motorist coverage and how does it work in Wisconsin?
Yeah, uninsured motorist coverage is there as a safeguard in case the driver who hit you does not have insurance. And that uninsured part is specifically for the bodily injury part of your claim. That's separate from fixing your car. That's collision coverage or comprehensive coverage. That's separate. Uninsured motorist is really just for the injury part of your case. So in that situation, we're talking about medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, future medical expenses, things of that nature.
Yes, I'm so grateful we had those coverages because we did. My parents had explained this to me. I was 17 when a drunk driver hit us. And yeah, and they explained to us why we were suing our own insurance company for the damages that my parents especially suffered. And yeah, it was a real blessing that we had it for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that they have it on their policies. So why, how can people check this or know where they
Yeah.
have?
These days, most people, it's on an app, right? So on your app, it's normally listed under the declarations part. There's sometimes something called coverages or declarations is normally what it's called, depending on which app you're using. And underneath there, you'll see the abbreviation. Normally, it's UM/UIM. And you will see that, and then a number listed. The common amounts you see are 50,000, 100,000, sometimes 250,000. And of course, you can buy more. But those are the amounts that you see in that uninsured, underinsured coverage.
So in those cases, is that where it gets capped? If somebody's injured so
Yes.
badly they're in the ICU for a month, is that going to cover?
That is where it gets capped. And Wisconsin is unique. I used to practice in a different state. Wisconsin, the uninsured carrier, your insurance company, they get an offset for the amount of insurance the other driver had. So if the other driver has 100,000 and you say, I purchased 100,000, in most states, you'd have 200,000 of coverage. In Wisconsin, no, you'd only have 100,000. Your policy is offset by the amount of coverage the other driver has. I'll be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And most people are very surprised. They think they bought $100,000 of coverage. And it doesn't say that offset language is not very apparent. They'll tell you that. It's not listed right on the main, front coverages sheet. They think they've got $100,000 of coverage. In reality, they've got 100,000 minus whatever the other driver has. So a lot of people don't understand that. The situation that you talked about, let's say you're in the ICU for a week. Yeah, then it's all about damage control. So we've got $100,000 and we're going to say, how can we get, in most cases, the health insurance plan that's going to have like a reimbursement claim? How can we get them to either waive their claim or take the least amount they can and get those medical bills down, negotiated as low as we can so we can have some money for the injured person. That's a lot of my job, is where there's not enough coverage and we're actually fighting with the health plan and we're fighting with the medical providers, not the auto insurance, because the auto insurance company is going to pay that full amount.
And once again, it took a long time. I was coming back for subpoenas while I was in college, and it just took a long time. But the injuries were fairly severe, and they, of course, wanted to see how long-term they would be.
Yep. Yeah, that's things. You really got to be, it's very hard to assess the value of someone's case when their injury is still uncertain. Like if they're still treating, if they're still improving or maybe not improving. You really need to wait until you reach that pre-accident injury level, or you hit like what the doctors call maximum medical improvement. Have you basically plateaued at a new, this is as good as you're going to get. But doctors normally, to their credit, aren't going to say, yeah, you've hit your new ceiling, your new normal, until they've exhausted every kind of therapy and modality that they can. So that will sometimes take years, and the legal case really can't happen until that's done.
Well, laws can change with regards to this. I mean, theoretically, but how often do they? For instance, what you just described earlier with the 100,000, could that change? Is it likely?
I hope so. There's a association called the Wisconsin Trial Lawyers, which is mostly made up of injury lawyers and some criminal defense lawyers. And we're always advocating for changes like this because we really think it's unfair to the consumer in Wisconsin that they don't understand what they're purchasing. They think they are purchasing more coverage than they really are. So, I mean, really, I would venture to say nearly 100% of the people who come to me don't know about this offset unless they've had a previous accident. Almost no one knows about that offset language, but it's in every insurance policy in Wisconsin. And like I told you, I know in other states, those offsets have been found to basically be unenforceable for that reason, because the consumer doesn't really understand what they're purchasing.
How long has that offset been part of Wisconsin law?
That's a good,
No?
I mean, as long as I've been practicing, I think it goes back to the 1970s, but I'm actually not sure on that. I'd have to look into it. I'm not sure. A long time. More,
Fascinating.
more states used to have this offset language, and in most cases now they've been stricken down either by the departments of insurance or by the Supreme Court of those states.
So, how do you investigate the insurance situation in a case to figure out what's actually available?
It's being very specific with the insurance companies and asking them what coverage are available because they will often not volunteer that. A big one is in a closely related coverage to uninsured and underinsured is umbrella coverage. So you could have an umbrella policy that goes even above and beyond an uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And we need to know if that policy exists and is it connected to the auto claim? Does it cover above and beyond uninsured and underinsured? And some policies it does, and some policies it does not. And a lot of people think if they've got an umbrella, it covers everything. It's an umbrella. That's the whole point. They really need to ask their insurance agent, does this cover me if someone without insurance hits me in a car accident? For many people, that's their biggest risk is something like that in life, is a car accident caused by someone else that doesn't have insurance. Because if you have to miss, let's say the example you mentioned where you're in the ICU and let's say you miss a bunch of time from work, well, your mortgage keeps coming, your car payment keeps coming. So that's the biggest risk that a lot of people have. I always tell people buy as much coverage as you can, especially if you are in that stage of life where maybe you've got a family and you've got a lot of bills to pay. It's worth it to protect yourself on the downside risk.
So, what should people be aware of with regards to how insurance companies handle UM and UIM claims?
In theory, they owe you first party like fiduciary duties, meaning that they have to like treat your claim fairly, like which is the opposite of someone else's insurance company. Someone else's insurance company, I mean, their duty is to their shareholders and to pay the least amount they can on this claim. In theory, your carrier has to pay you something fair, where that duty is not on the other driver's insurance company. In practice, I find the value of the claims the same. And they use something in the law called fair. Is this like fairly debatable? Are they in the range that's at least fairly debatable? And they will push you close to trial before they pay something fair, especially in large claims. And in my opinion, it borders on bad faith. In other words, like they are breaching their own contract. Because again, this is someone you paid money to and signed a contract with. You shouldn't have to jump through all of these needless hoops for them to pay the claim. In my experience, you still do.
Is how they handle these claims different than how they handle regular liability claims?
I think some of the insurance companies, somewhat, that they are more likely to pay something fair more quickly. But in plenty of situations, I see them still very much disputing the claim if they can. I can think of a case. Yeah, I can think of a case right now where a client of mine had a bad concussion that didn't resolve. This was a middle-aged woman in the prime of her career, and she had a concussion that did not resolve. She had to go to UW-Madison. She had to get all of this treatment. The third party only had $100,000 in coverage. She had a $1 million uninsured, underinsured policy. Her life was really sadly ruined. So after that offset, there was $900,000 in coverage left. The insurance company did not make an offer for years. They didn't believe she had a brain injury, despite all of these great doctors saying, yes, she does. Yes, she does. And it's debilitating. They finally paid the policy limit, but it took years before they would pay that. In my opinion, they had gotten to the point of bad faith. We actually did sue them for bad faith in that case and ended up settling that as well. But yeah, they will still, if there's an argument that they can hang their hat on, they're going to take it and they're going to try to use that to pay the least they can.
I'm just curious, whatever happens to the person who was uninsured or underinsured, is there any repercussions for them?
So in most cases, nothing really happens. When someone has no insurance, a lot of times we will still file a suit against them and get a judgment. We got to work with your insurance company in that case because they're going to have rights to that money if they paid on an uninsured claim, right? They're going to have rights to go after that driver. But let's say someone has $100,000. Speaking from my own experience, in most cases, no, we are not going to sue them to go above and beyond that because that's an amount that most people have in Wisconsin. That I think in Wisconsin, I don't know the percentage, but I'm going to guess it's less than 10 or 20% of people have more than $100,000 of liability coverage. Because that is kind of, for a long time, that was seen as like the gold standard of what you could have would be a $100,000, $300,000 policy. That means $100,000 per person, $300,000 per accident. In my opinion, that's now insufficient because medical bills are just so high. An emergency trip visit used to maybe be $500 or $1,000. Now it's $5,000, $7,000. So the world has just changed, but I think our coverages really haven't. But still, generally speaking, if someone had at least $100,000 in coverage and you have uninsured, underinsured coverage, I'm going to advise you just settle with their insurance company, move on, make the claim to your insurance company, let your insurance company chase them for the extra if they want.
Well, as we wrap up today's episode, and this is for someone listening who just found out the other driver didn't have enough insurance or any insurance, what would you want them to know about their options?
I'd want them to know that, again, they need to check their policy and see if there's uninsured or underinsured coverage available that could step up and pay that. I'd want them to know that, hey, even if that other driver said they didn't have insurance, number one, there might be someone else in their household who does have insurance. And I have encountered, not often, people lie about that because they don't want the insurance claim. So they will say, no, I don't have coverage or whatever, and just think that it'll just go away because they don't want someone to make a claim against their policy. So sometimes you do have to dig in and go a little deeper. By that, I mean filing a lawsuit, or there are services that we subscribe to that can look up, that have, so I don't know how, but they have access to insurance databases and they can tell me who the policy holder is, or who the insurance policy is for that driver. So we'll do that stuff and make sure that there's no insurance available before we just take their word for it.
Excellent points. Thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you for listening to Benson on Injury Law. If you've been hit by a driver who didn't have insurance or didn't have enough, you can get clear answers about what your own policy covers at paulbensonlawfirm.com. And if today's episode helped explain how UM and UIM work in Wisconsin, please leave a review and subscribe to the show, or even share it with somebody who needs this information. Thank you, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Leann. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.